Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today CELC just filed an 8K and the key takeaway is a mixed bag of strong clinical results for a new drug, but a surprisingly negative market reaction. Quick note, this is not financial advice, just my take on public filings for educational purposes. The company announced very positive results from a late stage clinical trial for their breast cancer drug Gedatolisib, yet the stock is plummeting. We need to dig into why. Celcuity Inc., exact name of registrant as specified in its charter Celcuity Incorporated, the company we are looking at, is a biotechnology firm. They are developing drugs to treat cancer. Scroll Form 8K current report. Scroll this filing in 8K is like a public announcement for significant events that a company needs to share with investors. Today they are sharing important news about their Phase 3 Victoria -1 clinical trial. Celcuity Incorporated is traded on the Nasdaq stock market under the ticker symbol. CELC, their common stock, is registered there, meaning it is available for public trading. Scroll Item 7.01 Regulation FD Disclosure. Scroll, the first key piece of information comes from Regulation FD, which is all about fair disclosure. On the 2nd of June 2026, Celcuity Incorporated put out a press release. This press release shared the detailed effectiveness, or efficacy, and safety results from a specific part of their clinical trial called the PIK3 CA mutant type cohort, part of the Victoria -1 trial. Scroll on the 2nd of June 2026, Celcuity Inc. The company issued a press release announcing detailed efficacy and safety results from its PIK3 CA mutant type MT cohort of its Phase 3 Victoria -1 clinical trial. A copy of the press release is furnished as Exhibit 99.1 to this report and is incorporated herein by reference scroll. This means the company is officially telling everyone about these trial results. They are essentially saying, here is what we found out about our drug Gedatolisib in patients with a specific type of breast cancer. Scroll Item 8.01 Other Events. Scroll now, diving into the actual results which are detailed in Item 8.01, the Other Events section. This is where the core news lies. Scroll on the 2nd of June 2026. The company announced detailed efficacy and safety results from the PIK3 CAMT cohort of the Phase 3 Victoria -1 clinical trial of Gedatolisib, an investigational pan-PI3 K-fork 1/2 inhibitor, in adults with hormone receptor positive HR, human epidermal growth factor receptor 2 negative, HER2, PIK3 CAMT, locally advanced or metastatic breast cancer ABC following progression on, or after, treatment with a CDK4/6 inhibitor and an aromatase inhibitor. Victoria -1 is the first Phase 3 clinical trial to compare the efficacy of 2-PI3KC AKTT Formtor PAM inhibitors in this patient population. Scroll, the trial tested Gedatolisib in adults with a specific type of breast cancer. This cancer was hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative, and had a mutation in the PIK3 CA gene. These patients had already gone through treatment with a CDK4/6 inhibitor and an aromatase inhibitor, meaning their cancer had progressed. What is significant here is that Victoria -1 is the first Phase 3 trial to directly compare two PAM inhibitors in this particular group of patients. That is a big deal for researchers and doctors. Scroll in the trial, the Gedatolisib triplet demonstrated a statistically significant and clinically meaningful improvement in median progression-free survival (PFS) among patients, increasing the likelihood of survival without disease progression or death by 2 times compared to alpelisib plus fulvestrant, based on a hazard ratio HR of 0.5, 95% CI 0.37 minus 0.68, p-finality 0.0001, the median PFS, as assessed by blinded independent central review, was nearly 2 times longer, 11.1 months versus 5.6 months, compared to alpelisib plus fulvestrant. The objective response rate, OR, of the Gedatolisib triplet was 48.9% compared to 26.0% with alpelisib plus fulvestrant, and the median duration of response, DOR, for the Gedatolisib triplet was 15.7 months compared to 7.5 months for alpelisib plus fulvestrant. Scroll. Now for the numbers that should be exciting but clearly aren't pleasing the market right now. When Gedatolisib was given in a triplet combination, it showed a really meaningful improvement in progression-free survival, or PFS. This is how long patients lived without their cancer getting worse. The trial found that the Gedatolisib triplet more than doubled the chances of survival without progression compared to alpelisib plus fulvestrant. The median PFS was 11.1 months for Gedatolisib versus 5.6 months for the other treatment. That is nearly a 2-fold increase. The objective response rate, meaning how many patients saw their tumors shrink, was also much better, 48.9% for Gedatolisib compared to 26.0% for alpelisib plus fulvestrant. And the duration of response, how long that positive effect lasted, was 15.7 months versus 7.5 months. These are undeniably strong results on paper. Scroll for the Gedatolisib doublet. The median PFS was more than 2 times longer, 11.3 months versus 5.6 months, compared to alpelisib plus fulvestrant, HAR 0.5195% CI, 0.33 minus 0.79, descriptive P 0.0013. The OR of the Gedatolisib doublet was 35.7%, and the median DOR was 24.2 months. Scroll even when Gedatolisib was used in a doublet combination, it still showed impressive numbers. The median PFS was 11.3 months. Again, more than double the 5.6 months seen with alpelisib plus fulvestrant. The objective response rate was 35.7% and the duration of response was a very lengthy 24.2 months. These are outstanding outcomes, especially when you consider the competitive landscape. Scroll first phase 3 trial to demonstrate superiority of one PAM inhibitor versus another. Scroll this trial sets a new benchmark. It is the first phase 3 trial to clearly show that one PAM inhibitor is better than another. Scroll the median PFS of 11.1 months for the Gedatolisib. Triplet is the highest reported by any phase 3 trial for patients with HRI-HIT2. ABC receiving a regimen including endocrine therapy as second-line treatment. Scroll the 11.1 month median PFS for the Gedatolisib triplet is the best seen in any phase 3 trial for this specific patient group when they are on their second line of treatment. Scroll the OR of 48.9% for the Gedatolisib. Triplet is the highest reported by any phase 3 clinical trial for a regimen including endocrine therapy in second-line HRI-HIT2. ABC scroll and the 48.9% objective response rate for the Gedatolisib triplet is the highest ever reported in a phase 3 clinical trial for this same patient group. So, we have incredibly strong efficacy data here. Scroll through Gedatolisib, triplet and Gedatolisib. Doublet were generally well tolerated in the trial with mostly low-grade treatment-related adverse events. Trays. The most common grade 3+ trays for the Gedatolisib triplet. The Gedatolisib doublet and alpelisib plus fulvestrant groups included neutropenia, 58.8%, 0%, and 0.7% of patients, respectively, stomatitis, 16.3%, 5.8%, and 5.3% of patients, respectively. Rash, 6.5%, 5.8%, and 15.1% of patients, respectively, and hyperglycemia, 2.6%, 0%, and 14.5% of patients, respectively. Trays led to the discontinuation of study treatment in 2.6% of patients in the Gedatolisib triplet group, 3.8% in the Gedatolisib doublet group, and 7.1% in the alpelisib plus fulvestrant group. One grade 5 tray in the Gedatolisib triplet group, which was related to palbociclib, was reported. No grade 5 trays were reported in the Gedatolisib doublet group, and 2 grade 5 trays were reported in the alpelisib plus fulvestrant group. Scroll on the safety front, Gedatolisib was generally well tolerated. Most side effects were low grade. The most common serious side effects for the Gedatolisib triplet were neutropenia, where the body has too few white blood cells, at 58.8%, and stomatitis, or mouth sores, at 16.3%. While neutropenia is high, it is notable that it was 0 for the doublet group. For context, the comparator alpelisib plus fulvestrant had much higher rates of hyperglycemia, or high blood sugar, at 14.5%. Importantly, treatment discontinuation due to side effects was actually lower for the Gedatolisib groups compared to the alpelisib plus fulvestrant group. There was 1 death related to a side effect in the triplet group, but no deaths in the doublet group and 2 deaths in the comparator group. Overall, the safety profile appears manageable, especially given the strong efficacy. Scroll the company intends to submit these data to the US Food and Drug Administration, the FDA as a supplemental new drug application, SNDA, and to submit Victoria -1 data to other regulatory authorities following the SNDA submission. Scroll Celcuity Incorporated plans to submit these data to the US Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, for approval. This is a crucial step towards potentially getting this drug to patients. Scroll the FDA has granted priority review of Celcuity's new drug application, NDA for Gedatolisib in patients with HRI-HIT2, PEAK3KR wild-type WT, and assigned a Prescription Drug User Fee Act, PEBDUFA goal date of the 17th of July 2026. Scroll, interestingly, the FDA has already granted priority review to Celcuity Incorporated's new drug application for Gedatolisib in a different patient group, those with wild-type PIK3. Cancer, the target date for a decision on that application, the PDUFA goal date, is the 17th of July 2026. This shows the FDA is taking this drug seriously. Now, we always see this section titled Forward-Looking Statements. This is really a legal disclaimer from the company. They are saying that certain statements in this report are predictions about the future. They're based on current expectations, but the reality is that a lot can change. Companies use this to protect themselves from lawsuits if things do not go as planned. They mention risks like unexpected delays in clinical trials or the FDA review process, and the possibility that competing therapies might emerge. Scrollatum 9.01 Financial Street Statements and Exhibits. Scroll, finally, we have the exhibits. Scroll 99.1 press release dated the 2nd of June 2026. Scroll. The most important exhibit is the press release from the 2nd of June 2026, which contains all the details of the clinical trial results we've been discussing. So, let's piece this together. Celcuity Incorporated is reporting outstanding efficacy and safety data for Gedatolisib in a difficult-to-treat breast cancer population. The drug is showing significant improvements in survival and response rates compared to existing treatments. The FDA is already giving their other application priority review. Objectively, this should be a cause for celebration and a stock rally. However, the recent news headlines paint a very different picture. We saw headlines like Biotech plummets on cancer disappointment, Celcuity shares fall despite strong phase 3 breast cancer trial data, and Celcuity Incorporated C.E.L.C. Stock analysis of biotech play with a 14% upside potential. This is where things get puzzling. A common pattern we see is that when a company announces strong drug trial data, the stock should go up. But here, Celcuity Incorporated stock is reportedly dropping significantly. What could be the reason behind this market reaction? One possibility is that investors had even higher expectations. Perhaps they were looking for even more dramatic improvements or a perfect safety profile with zero high-grade side effects. Another factor could be the specific patient population targeted. While these results are significant, are they broad enough to justify the current valuation of the company? The market can be very forward-looking, and sometimes the current stock price already reflects anticipated success. We also need to consider the context of the broader biotech market. Sometimes a single piece of seemingly good news can be overshadowed by negative sentiment in the overall sector or by other bigger news affecting the market. The headlines mentioning a 22.2% decline and an ever worse day for the stock suggest a significant and immediate negative reaction, which is unusual for such positive clinical data. Let's look at their institutional holders. Major players like Baker Bros Advisors, Avro Capital Advisors, and Perceptive Advisors are significant shareholders. If they are selling, it suggests a strong conviction from experienced investors that something is not right or that the risk profile has changed in their view. My biggest concern here is that the market is sending a clear signal that something is off, despite the reported good news. Is it possible the drug's side effect profile, despite being generally well tolerated, has specific issues that are raising red flags for major investors? For example, the neutropenia rate of 58.8% in the triplet arm, though common in this drug class, could be a point of concern for long-term safety and tolerability, especially when compared to the 0 rate in the doublet. Or perhaps the market is worried about the commercial viability given the price point of the drug or the competition it faces. What I am actually looking for is a clearer understanding of the market's perception versus the data presented. Is the company downplaying any risks, or is the market overreacting to something not fully explained in this filing? We'll need to watch how this plays out, especially leading up to the PDUFA date for the other application. This disconnect between the reported data and the stock performance is the most critical thing to watch with Celcuity Incorporated right now. Oh, and the research tools I actually use are linked in the description. They help keep this channel going. That is my take. Stay decoded. If you found this breakdown helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. Join our Discord community via the link in the description.